Hello everyone, and welcome back to Clara Sews Vintage. Today I'm going to be showing you how I make my 1950s style slim skirt. I have waxed poetic about this skirt on my channel numerous times, and today I'm finally going to be showing you how I make it. Last winter I had filmed all of the footage to make a video on this skirt, and I completely forgot that I never edited and posted it. So this fall I ran across some lovely plaid wool suiting that I had in my stash, and I knew that I had bought it planning to make, it was kind of a remnant, and I had bought it planning to make one of these slim skirts because it was the perfect amount to do that. So I thought this would be the perfect opportunity to finally show you how I make my slim skirts. I believe that this might be my 6th version of this skirt that I've made. As I've said before, I absolutely love this skirt. I love the way it fits me. I love the versatility of this style. It really, for me, just goes with everything. And I think when you're building a vintage wardrobe, it's really important to find a style that you really, really love, and then you can make endless variations on that. So for me, this outfit is kind of a perfect example of that. I have made, I think, 4 or 5 of this blouse, and I've made long sleeve and short sleeve. I have made 3 or 4 of these waistcoats, and plans to make more. And like I said, I believe that I made 6 of these slim skirts. And when you make them in various fabrics, so fabric textures and weights and patterns, you really can mix and match, and the possibilities are endless. And it gives you different looks while still being confident in the silhouette and the fit of the things that you're making. And also cuts down on mock-ups if you're like me. I'm a firm believer in making mock-ups, but I also hate the process of making a mock-up because it feels like I kind of make a thing twice. So if I can kind of double up and use a pattern that I really love the way it fits multiple times, that is definitely a win for me. But yeah, so let's jump in. Enough rambling on my part. This is a really simple skirt, and I'll kind of show you the pattern that I use, but really there are a lot of slim skirts from the late 40s and 50s, genuine patterns on the market with very small variations to the one that I'm making today. So you should be able to get your hands on a pattern that is at least very similar fairly easily. So if you are interested in making your own. Another comment I would like to make really quick before we move on to the making portion of this video is when I first started dressing vintage, I was very apprehensive about wearing slim skirts. I don't have the smallest waist in the world, and I have rather full hips and thighs, and so I was afraid that this style would not be flattering on me at all. But I decided to bite the bullet, and because I really liked the images that I saw of this style of skirt on patterns or pictures from the period, and so I decided I'm gonna jump in and try to make a mock-up at least of one. If I hate the way the mock-up fits, I won't make one. And I ended up really, really loving it. Like I said, this is probably my favorite skirt pattern that I have. So it's important to know your body, but it's also important to at least tip your toe out of your comfort zone a little bit and at least try making a mock-up of something that maybe you wouldn't think would fit you or flatter you, because you might be surprised. Now, I would not necessarily advocate, buying like a super expensive reproduction piece of clothing in a style you're really not confident will look good on you, or jumping in and using like $50 a yard material to make something without making a mock-up first, or even maybe your first version of something using a bit more of an affordable fabric, just to make sure that you do really love it. But it is worth kind of stepping outside your comfort zone a little bit and trying something a little bit different, because you might be surprised and you might come across a new favorite style like I did. So, okay, now really enough rambling. Let's jump into making the skirt. So the skirt we're going to be making today started off as this pattern right here, which is Simplicity 1, 3, 4, 5, and this is from somewhere in the 1950s. I don't know if I found the date on this one yet or not. But anyway, this is a pretty average 1950s style slim skirt. And so as you can see here on the pattern, this skirt was originally one panel, and it was cut along the fold at the center. So the fold was the center front, and then the skirt was given shape using a series of darts here that you can see in this little diagram. So larger darts were at what would have been the side seams, and then there were also darts at the front and the back. I made at least one of these, maybe two. I think I made two of these as one piece, and they were really cute. And then I was kind of upcycling a skirt that was way too big for me. I had really just bought it for the fabric, but the pieces were not big enough to cut it in one continuous piece like this pattern called for, but I knew that I really liked the way this pattern fit. So what I did was I took the pattern, so here's my original, and it's a big pattern piece too, since this is like an entire skirt. So I don't think I can get the whole thing in frame, but I can show you the top. So this is the seam that was supposed to be the side, like the side seam shaping dart. And so what I did was I just traced this whole side on my pattern paper. And then what I did was I just came out 5/8 of an inch from each of these dots, which would give me my seam allowance. And then I just went straight down here. And so that I did that for the front and the back. And that gave me pretty much this exact same skirt, but with separate front and back pieces. So it was really, really simple. You can find a lot of patterns that are just already like this, where they have a back and a front, or you can also find these like, one piece skirt patterns from the 50s as well. I believe this one was called a 1 yard skirt, because it takes 1 yard of 54 width fabric, which is one thing that I love about this skirt, because it's very economical as far as fabric goes. So if I find a really special, really expensive fabric, I can usually swing at getting 1 yard and making a pencil skirt out of it, even if I wouldn't be able to afford, getting 3 or 3.5 yards to make an entire dress or a fuller circle skirt. So it's kind of a fun pattern to be able to use that way as well, because you can make some pretty special skirts out of it that you might not be able to afford the fabric for. Or if you just can't find a larger chunk of fabric, like I said about the fabric I'll be using for this skirt, I got it as a remnant, and so I can only buy what they had. So it's nice to be able to use it on maybe smaller pieces of fabric that you have in your stash and stuff too. So it's really handy, at least I think so. So here are the actual pattern pieces that we will be using. This is the back piece, so you can see here's our hip curve, and depending on your body shape, this will be more or less pronounced. That's why it's important to make a mock-up. I'm also very petite in the height of like where my hips sit, the fullest part of my hips sits in relation to my waist. I'm pretty short. I mean, I'm short all over, but so my hip curve is like up a little bit higher than some people's might be. Like if I made this skirt for my mom, I would probably have to lower the hip curve a little bit because she's a little bit taller in that area than I am. So, and you can also adjust the length of your darts and how big your darts are depending on how big of a differential you have between your waist and your hips. So this is a fairly simple skirt to fit. It just takes the time to put in to get those fit details perfect. But once you do, it's a really cute and really pretty simple skirt. And there aren't, because it's so simple, I think it's a good beginner project for fitting yourself. But anyway, so enough rambling. So we have our hip curve and our darts at the top, and then since this is a back, we have this little tab part here, which will become our kick pleat. And as you can see, it's pretty straight. It doesn't, maybe you can't see that very well, but it's pretty straight. It doesn't nip in very, like, at all, which makes it easier to walk in and more comfortable to wear, I think. So it's our front pattern piece, or back pattern piece, I mean. And then our front pattern piece is almost identical to the back. So again, we have our hip curve, which is pretty much the same as the back hip curve. We have our dart. The front only has one dart, back has two, and then it's really is just a very rectangular, except for nipping in a little bit, curving in at the waist above the hip curve. It really is very straight all the way down, and this one is just straight. It doesn't have the tab since the kick pleat is in the back, and this will be the side seam, so that just gets sewn straight. And this is cut on the fold as well. And then we have our waistband piece, which is really just a big long rectangle. You really don't need a pattern piece for this because it really is just a long rectangle, and the length of it is determined by how big around the waist is on once your pieces are sewn together, so you can just measure that, figure out how big you need to make it. And then this is the little kick pleat panel. So this gets sewn to this will be cut on the fold. So once you have this cut out of your fabric, I trace straight down. So I have a basting line. So I sew up my center back seam, which you'll see in a couple minutes. So I baste this part shut, and then if you imagine, there's another one of these sewn right here. I iron these pieces like back onto itself once it's basted together, and then this, which is also doubled, this gets unfolded, and you place this right here, and then you're sewing along here to create the kick pleat. So like I said, you'll see all of that in the video coming up. If you don't want to bother buying a pattern for this style of skirt, the Closet Historian has a really good video on how to draft your own like skirt block pattern, and you can use that block to make a simple pencil skirt like this. So I believe hers does not have a kick pleat, but that's a pretty easy addition to just add to the center back. As you can see here, it's just kind of barely angled at the top, and then you just decide how wide you want your kick pleat. This one I believe is about 2.5 inches. for like the half of it. So this is about like 5.5 inches wide once the panel is cut on the fold and opened up. So that would be a really easy addition if you just kind of look at the back. If you look at some vintage patterns, you can kind of get an idea of how to do that. But yeah, so I will leave that video linked in the description if you can't get your hands on a pattern in your size or close to your size. Or if you just feel like drafting your own pattern, I will leave that in the description box below. So the first order of business was to transfer all of the pattern markings to my pieces of fabric. To do this, I'm using a wax-free fabric tracing paper and a tracing wheel. I have found this to be my favorite method of transferring pattern markings. Next, I just pinned and sewed all of the darts. This pattern has 4 darts in the back and 2 darts in the front. Finished sewing all of the darts, I gave them a good press, pressing them towards the center of the garment. Next, I basted the 2 back pieces together at the center back. As you can see here, I am basting the section that will be opened up into the kick pleat, and then I was supposed to use a regular stitch length in the middle and then go back to a basting stitch at the top where the zipper would be inserted in a moment. I forgot to do that, so as you can see in a moment, I'm going to go back and re-sew the center section with a smaller stitch length just to make sure that everything is secure. Next, I'm inserting the zipper. Let me know in the comments if you would be interested in me making an in-depth video going over how I personally like to insert my zippers. I can definitely do that if that's something that you would like to see. Next, it's time to work on the kick pleat. First, I sew the tab section at the bottom of the center back to the kick pleat panel. I like to work on the kick pleat and the zipper while the back section is still separate from the front before I have sewn the back and the front together at the side seams. I find it much easier to access these parts before I have sewn the front and the back together. And here I'm just pinning the kick pleat to the back of the skirt along the top of the kick pleat. Then I'm just going to go ahead and top stitch along the top of the kick pleat to close that off and secure it to the back of the skirt. Now that the zipper and the kick pleat are complete, I can sew up the side seams. When I was cutting this out and when I was pinning the side seams and the back center seam, I was really careful to make sure that I lined up the stripes in the plaid so that it matched really well. Now I am sewing the waistband to the skirt. As you can see here, I have used a featherweight fusible interfacing on the waistband before pinning the waistband to the skirt and sewing it on. So now I'm just sewing the waistband facing to the waistband. So I've already pressed the waistband up away from the skirt and I pressed the seam allowance toward the waistband. So I have already ironed the free side of the waistband facing up by about 3/4 of an inch. That way, after I iron the facing over the seam allowances, it's super easy to hand stitch down. If you would like me to film a video kind of showing all of the details about how I finish my projects, let me know that as well in the comments. I would be happy to do that for you. I usually leave it out, otherwise my videos would be way long, but if you would like to know the details of how I finish the smaller details, kind of the finishing work of making my projects, I can definitely show you that in a separate video. Here's the finished skirt. Very dog hair covered, but just ignore that. I can't really have dark colored things that don't show dog hair, so he's worth it. But anyway, so here's the finished skirt. Like I said, I have already said numerous times how much I love this style. I just think it's really kind of sophisticated, but not super fancy, really put together, and I just really like it. I think it's classy, and I always feel super confident when I'm wearing it, and that's really the important thing, to find styles that you feel really confident and pretty and beautiful in, and that's what this style makes me feel. especially with the waistcoat, and I just feel like it's really smart and put together, and yeah, I really, really like it. So the full little turnaround, kind of see the back. It's just, I don't know if I would call it a pencil skirt per se, because it doesn't nip in really tightly. It's very kind of straight, and I do that on purpose because I want it to be easy to walk in. Really slim skirts, like wiggle skirts, can be kind of difficult to walk in, and I knew that with my balance issues, my disability, and my braces, that would not be a good option for me. So as you saw in like the pattern pieces and stuff, it's a very straight style. It doesn't, come in under the hips. It's just very straight, and that's the way I like it. But yeah, and then the kick pleat in the back also helps with mobility, going upstairs and making it up and down stairs and making it easy to walk in. But yeah, I love this version of it, of the skirt. I've had this fabric in my stash for I think about a year. I got it from Sew Over It in the UK. They were having like an end of the season clearance event or something. I might have gotten it last winter. I don't really remember exactly when I got it, but I love it. They only had like a little over a yard left, and I got all that they had. I do have enough to make a waistcoat, and I plan to do that at some point. But I also like the contrast with the green, and I think it pulls out, the green and the plaid really nicely, and I really like it. It turned out as good as I thought it would, which is always a satisfying feeling when you get a project done that you've been hoarding in your stash for a while, and you finally, get it done, and it's always very satisfying when it turns out like you pictured it would. So it makes me very happy, and yeah, I really love it. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments if you've ever made a slim skirt, or if there has ever been a style that you have been tentative to try and then you ended up loving it, kind of like I did with my slim skirts. Would love to hear your stories and comments in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. I really appreciate that. It helps me out. And if you're not subscribed already, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell button so you're notified every time I upload a new video. YouTube changed stuff so they don't send emails anymore, but when you go to your YouTube dashboard, little bell at the top, and your notifications for all your notified subscriptions will be in that area. So I have to watch that now instead of email, but hit the bell button and it'll let you know in that section every time I upload a new video. And thanks for hanging out with me today, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!